The Catholic Church teaches that upon death the body and soul are no longer one, but only temporarily separated. That the soul leaves the body, which is still considered holy, and you are no longer able to keep worshiping the flesh that is you, and instead should look to the soul, until, in their beliefs, the body is later resurrected to be with the soul once more. You may not know that there are many cases in which this is not true, where in fact the body is able to be kept and worshipped because it does not rot after death, in most cases without any known preservatives or embalming. So, how is this possible? There are 5 steps to becoming a saint. These steps all occur after their death. Step 1. They must have been dead for at least 5 years. This is to ensure that emotions don't play part in the decision, and they can be more properly evaluated for accomplishments while they were alive. There are some cases where this can take an extremely long time after their death, like one case I found where someone was eventually sainted over 1,000 years after they died. But apparently the waiting period can be waived by the Pope, so I guess that first step of waiting 5 years is kinda up in the air. Step 2 is to be a servant of God, which is pretty self-explanatory. Step 3. Show proof of a life of heroic virtue. So if the Pope decides that the person lived a life of heroic virtue, then they can be called venerable. And venerable is defined as someone with a great deal of respect, especially because of age, wisdom, or character. So basically, you need to be intelligent and nice. Step 4. Now this is the tough one. You may have thought, yeah, I'm on pretty good track to becoming a saint myself. But in step 4, you have to perform a verified miracle. This stage is called beatification. So to accomplish this, someone needs to pray to you after your death, and that prayer that they are asking must come true. The prayer being granted is seen as proof that you are already in heaven and able to interact with God on others' behalfs. Step 5. This is called canonization. For you to be considered canonized, you must have a second miracle attributed to you after you have been beatified. However, martyrs only need one verified miracle to be considered a saint. A martyr is someone that has been killed because of their beliefs, religious or otherwise. Okay, so now that you know what it takes to be a saint, let's talk about the shortcut where you don't have to accomplish most of these steps, and instead just don't rot after you die. That's it. Just don't rot. Simple. These are some cases that are very well documented that apparently this has happened. Incorruptibility is a Roman Catholic belief that divine intervention allows some human bodies to completely or partially avoid the normal process of decomposition after death, as a sign of their holiness. Incorruptibility is thought to occur even in the presence of factors which normally hasten decomposition. It is seen as distinct from good preservation of a body or from mummification. Incorruptible bodies are often said to have the odor of sanctity, exuding a sweet or floral pleasant aroma. After all that being said, let's look at a few documented cases. Saint Cecilia. Saint Cecilia was apparently the first known incorruptible saint to be documented. She died around 177 AD. The circumstances of her death were pretty interesting. Okay, so Saint Cecilia's husband and his brother were accused by early Christian prosecutors for being heretics, and given the choice to either admit they are heretics or be killed. They both were steadfast and killed for their beliefs. After this, Saint Cecilia attempted to give her husband and his brother a proper burial and was sentenced to death for this. Yeah, she was sentenced to death just for trying to rebury them. It seems like it was kind of hard not to be sentenced to death for just about anything back then. Because of Saint Cecilia's nobility, her captors decided to execute her in secrecy. Yeah, they didn't think it would look too good to the public. So their plan was to suffocate her by filling her bathhouse with poison in her own house. She sat in the poison-filled room for an entire day and night, apparently without being harmed. Because she was not harmed and still very much alive, they brought in an experienced executioner to behead her. He was required by law to take 3 swings, and those 3 swings failed to sever her head. So he left her there to bleed out, with her head essentially dangling from her neck. Doesn't sound like he was a very experienced executioner then. Then the story goes, she somehow stayed alive for 3 more days and nights before eventually expiring. Many years after her death, she was later exhumed to be relocated in the year 822 AD, 645 years after she was first buried. Her husband's bones were found along with her completely intact body. She was then relocated and reburied for another 777 years. When in the year 1599, she was again exhumed and said to still be completely intact. So, a statue was commissioned that is said to be the depiction of her body when it was exhumed in 1599. This statue can still be viewed to this day in the Trastevere Rione Church in Rome, Italy. The reason these incorruptible bodies are discovered in the first place is because when a holy person is being considered for sainthood, their body is exhumed to be moved to a more prominent place. During the move, the bodies are inspected to make sure they have the right person, and to potentially remove a few pieces of the garb or body parts to be used as holy relics. If the body is found to still be pliable and not look to be decomposed, then it is defined as incorrupt. Okay, here is another incorruptible saint with an interesting life. This is Saint Vincent de Paul. He was born in 1581 and at one point apparently was abducted and enslaved by pirates. According to his own letters, in 1605, Saint Vincent was sailing back from selling some properties when he was taken captive by Barbary pirates, which were Muslim pirates who operated from North Africa around the 16th century. His first owner was a fisherman, but Vincent was unsuitable for this line of work due to him being constantly seasick. So he was sold on to his next owner. His next owner was a physician and alchemist. He stayed with him until his new owner died. Then was sold on once more to his third owner, which was once a former priest and slave himself, that had to convert to Islam to gain his freedom. He later felt bad about enslaving another Christian, having been one himself at one time, so decided to escape with Vincent back to France to set him free. So after Vincent's remaining years of freedom, he eventually died. After Vincent's death, he was later exhumed in 1712, 53 years after his death. He was evidently completely intact at that time, then was reburied and again re-exhumed 25 years later. He was found to have decomposed due to underground flooding. So his bones were encased in a waxen figure, which is what you are looking at here. So from what they say, he was intact the first time he was exhumed, but not now. The interesting thing is that his heart is still considered incorrupt and not rotten, so it is displayed in this reliquary, which is a display for relics in Paris. But it's not really visible, so I'm not really sure what the point of the display is. It just looks like a black thing, which I guess it looks kind of cool though. Anthony of Stroncone. This one was very hard to find pictures of, alive or dead, so I had to work with what I could find, which was very bad quality. His story goes that after his death in 1417, he was buried beneath the floor of the church in San Damiano. A year after his death, a flame spontaneously started burning on the floor right above the spot where his body was buried, which a priest took as a sign from the heavens. He had the floor lifted, which revealed Anthony's body to be incorrupt and emitting a sweet aroma. After the fire, there seemed to be many other holy signs, like prayers being answered. 128 years later, the body was examined again, still intact and not rotting, so they placed it in a glass coffin. After that, a knocking could be heard coming from the coffin shortly before the death of a member of the community. This was apparently heard by many people. In 1649, a woman said to be possessed by the devil was brought before the coffin, and they say that Anthony's body sat up slightly and raised one hand a little. I don't know about you guys, but seeing this thing sit up, that sounds terrifying to me. The body is said to be still incorrupt to this day, but strangely, no photos for some reason. Alright, moving on. This next one, Anna Marie Taiji, reminds me of the psychological horror movie Saint Maud because of some of the information I read about her. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the character in the movie wasn't loosely based around this saint. But we'll get back to that. First of all, Anne Marie was born in the year 1769. She lived for 68 years and died in 1837. During her time with the church, she reportedly spoke to God several times. On one occasion, she said Jesus Christ said to her, "What is your wish, to follow Jesus poor and naked and stripped of all, or to follow him in his triumph and glory? Which do you choose?" She replied, "I embrace the cross of my Jesus. I will carry it like him in pain and ignominy. I await at his hands in triumph and glory in the hereafter." She was also reported to have experienced a series of ecstasies during her life. An ecstasy is defined as this: an emotional or religious frenzy or trance-like state. Originally, one involving an experience of mystic self-transcendence. It has also been noted by sometimes giving the person an orgasm, which brings me back to the movie relation. In the movie Saint Maud, the main character experiences many spiritual self-awakenings in the form of hearing God speak directly to her.
Mae'r awr yn nesau. Yn fuan fy fyddin ymuno ar coflediad mawr.
And during the course of the movie, having several ecstasies to completion. So, in the movie, we can explain these things in two different ways. Either Maud is actually being directly contacted by real godly beings, or medically, she is suffering from seizures and psychosis, which brings me back to Anna Marie. If you take a closer look at her, you can see her skin looks waxy and a little strange. Well, that's because this is apparently a death mask that was requested to be made before her death. And she was found later in 1920 to no longer be incorrupt. Huh. So I guess that can just change. And yep, another wax mask. Okay, so that brings us back to the science of things. There are many forces at play when we talk about decomposition, like temperature, moisture, acidity, and lots of outside influences that also change things. Have you ever heard of the soap lady, or the soap man? She is displayed at the Mutter Museum in Philadelphia. They are not as pretty as these other corpses, but they should both just be bones by now. But because of the combination of several minerals in the ground like potassium and salt, and fats in our body, they were essentially mummified. Fun fact, in the 17th century, a physician accidentally used the fat from one of these bodies to make candles, believing it was the preservative for the bodies and not a part of the body itself. Yeah, that one seems like a pretty big mistake to me. In conclusion, while researching this, I found that it's much more common than I first thought. I found a list of 160 cases of incorruptibility. So, if you decide you agree with science and that it's all just natural chemical manipulation, or you believe in your faith, that is for you to decide. But the more I researched myself, the more I realized that it was very hard, if not impossible, to find one of these many bodies displayed to be more than just a wax death mask. I cannot say with 100% certainty, but I suggest you do your own research. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this, then please leave a like, and I'll see you guys soon. If you like this video, maybe check out one of my other conspiracy theory videos or true crime.